Welcome back, everybody. This is part 2 of the Aero Precision Solus review. In this one, we're going to be comparing it to the Zermatt Origin, the differences, some things that I like, some things I don't like with each of them. And at the end, I'll kind of give you my overall opinion on mostly the Solus is what we're talking about today. Now, as you look at them, there's obviously some major differences. Upgrades, if you will, with the Solus, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So, overview of the Solus. I did make a video going into more depth. Go ahead and take a look down below, and I'll link that. If you haven't checked that out, go check that out. It's a Remington 700 clone, 3-lug action, integrated Picatinny rail, 20 MOA, and integral recoil lug. It's also cut for AICS and AW. So you got your options there. A little bit of a extended ejection port for the Magnum length cartridges. The Origin is a turned round action. It's got a bolted on 20 MOA rail, and it has a pinned recoil lug. So that's one of the biggest downsides some people think or say about this action. I will say swapping barrels with the pinned recoil lug, it can be kind of challenging in the field. Make sure you don't lose that pin, but you can make it work. It's fine. Also, this is a 2-lug action versus a 3-lug action. On the Origin is a 2-lug. The Solus is a 3-lug. So the ejection ports, you can see here, I believe the Origin is cut just for AICS. I don't think you can do a double stack in there, whereas the Solus is cut for AICS and AW. Neither rail is marked with numbers, but the Zermatt does have some lettering on there to kind of help you remember or place your optics, your rings, where you want them, and kind of remember where they're at. The Solus has a trigger hanger, which I've never used, so we'll see if that interferes with my Matrix or my ACC chassis. And other than that, they're very similar. Side release on the bolt. The bolts are different. The Origin has a floating head design, kind of like a Savage. It's fluted, and it comes apart pretty easily. If I can get that back. And the bolt heads are interchangeable. It is a control round feed, meaning that when it captures the cartridge out of the magazine, it has control over it the whole way through. And the ejector is that little piece down in there. I don't know if you can see that. It's a mechanical ejector, so if you come back slow, cartridge just falls out. Come back fast, it kicks it out farther is the idea behind that. Whereas the bolt on the Solus is a 3-lug, like I said in the previous video. It's got 2 ejectors, and the extractor is right there in that lug. It also has a removable bolt head, and they will be offering different bolt heads for different calibers. Takedown, a little bit easier, not much, but very similar. So my overall opinion, I guess you could say, of the Solus action compared to the Origin is it has a lot of features, a lot of upgrades that would make it superior to the Origin. And in a lot of ways, it could be considered that. It's hard to really say without shooting it. I am hoping to get out and shoot it soon. If you watch my first video, I talk about the pre-fits. I have 2 of them. They both screwed on and head spaced onto this action. I don't have an action wrench yet. They're not available, and it's proprietary. I don't have like a universal one that clamps over the top to torque it down. But hand tightening the barrel, just checking headspace roughly. Now I know that's not the proper way to do it. It is not considered done yet, but just that preliminary test does show that it headspaces on my pre-fit barrels. One's a pre-fit, one was spun up by a gunsmith. And I checked both, just hand tightening them with a quick snap, and they both felt the same on the go gauge, and then the no-go gauge didn't close on either one of them. So I would be pretty confident saying at least this action is as advertised to be compatible with a Origin pre-fit. There are a few surfaces on the action, like this is flat here. I don't know if you can see that. There's a little flat there, as well as right here. Let's see if you can kind of... And then this has kind of got a different machined part. I'm not sure why it's different than the rest of the action. Whereas the Origin is just round. So I'm assuming the one stock that I have bedded for the Origin, this action is probably not going to fit properly into it, which is okay. The chassis aren't bedded, so they should work fine. Now, the biggest difference that I've been able to see in which the Origin, I think, is superior to the Solus is the smoothness of the bolt. I'll see if you can kind of hear this. It's a little rough. It's not, I shouldn't say rough. It's not as smooth as the Origin. If I do a quick little test, just seeing, this is not perfectly scientific, but just to give you an idea, the action's level. As I start to tilt it, I get to about 20 degrees, 40 degrees, maybe 45 or 50 degrees, that bolt starts to move. If I bump it, it'll go the rest of the way. But just sitting there about 40, 45 degrees to 50 degrees maybe. Yeah, this one's kind of a little bit more. That one's probably closer to 55 or 60 in order for that bolt to just fall. Whereas on the Origin, if you can hear, that's a lot smoother. I'm sure there are actions that are more smooth, but when I hear of an action being butter or glass, that's kind of what I imagine. That's pretty smooth. If I hold that one level and I start to tilt it, about 15 degrees, maybe 20. Yeah, 20, 25 degrees maybe. It's just smoother. And the cocking, they're both cock on lift. That's just a smooth, continuous motion. Like, they compare triggers to glass breaking or glass sliding. That is just a smooth slide the whole way. It's not rough, doesn't grab, anything like that. The Solus, on the other hand, as I'm lifting this, you ever have those triggers that are just a little gritty? It catches as it's going. Not really catches. It's not terrible. And I'm obviously doing this very slow, trying to feel differences. But it's almost like it goes and stops and goes and stops. It's like a gritty trigger is what it's like. And one thing that I doubt, but it may be a factor, is this action has about 2,500 rounds on it. This one has 0. I've ran the bolt now maybe 100 times. 2,500 rounds of live fire, and then probably a couple thousand dry fires at least on this one. So could that be it needs to be broke in? Possibly. Maybe. I don't know. All I know is between the two actions, I like the feature set, and I like the facets right? It's a good looking action. They did a great job on the finish machining on the exterior. And I'm sure, I don't know if what I'm feeling is like the cocking angles, the ramps here. There's one here, there's one over here. I don't know if those need to be polished, or I don't know if it's something else. There's, I mean, a little bit of tool mark, kind of machining work here. One thing I am noticing, the finish, and this bolt is smooth, but the finish is wearing on all the edges. And just handling it here today, 100, 120 maybe cycles, the finish is already starting to wear. Now it is nitride, and that doesn't affect the hardness or the lubricity, supposedly. So I don't know if that is part of it. I don't know if it's the bolt catch that rides in here, maybe, that's making it feel gritty. It's kind of a different design. I don't know that I've seen another one like it. I'm sure there is one. Or if it's these cocking ramps just aren't smooth. I mean, it's, if you look at that, and if you watch my first video, there's just a ton of oil on there. So it's definitely lubricated. That's not the problem. So I'm kind of focusing pretty heavily on that bolt and how smooth it is, or lack of smoothness compared to the Origin. And maybe that's just because I'm trying to find something negative about it. I don't know. I like the integral rail, the integral lug. The trigger hanger was super easy to install. I don't think I like it or dislike it one way or the other necessarily. I kind of like this bolt stop. And in the first video, I kind of talked about that. How I'm pretty sure it transfers all the energy to the action instead of the little pin, so less likely to break the pin. Until I get out and shoot it, it's kind of hard to really say which one's better. It's not fluted on the Solus. I like the fluted bolt. I like the look of that. So that's a cosmetic thing. But the smoothness of the bolt is definitely perceivable when you have an action next to each other. Now, when I was messing around with this, picking it up, it kind of felt maybe like it wasn't the smoothest, but it was hard to tell. But as I have them here and I'm playing with them side by side, the Origin is definitely smoother. That's where it edges out. The control round feed, I really like the control round feed. Picking up the cartridge and having control over it. It's not necessary. Most actions don't have it. And the mechanical ejector, I am a fan of the mechanical ejector. But with that, I have also multiple times had cases fail to eject because I'm going too slow. So that's a technique, not necessarily a knock on the action. My final thoughts, like I said, I haven't shot it. So that's a big thing to keep in mind. But if I were looking, again, knowing how smooth this action is, the Origin versus the Solus, I can't really say which one is better. It's hard to say. It's a preference thing. If you just want a buttery smooth bolt, I do wish, if this were as smooth as the Origin, if the Solus was as smooth as the Origin, I mean, it'd be a home run every single time for me. I would have very hard time seeing any downside. The amount of force to cock it feels similar. I can't really tell much of a difference. This one's just over a longer distance, and but I can't really say that one's harder to cock. Now, when you're running a bolt fast, you probably can't tell either. Anyways. Another thing with it, I don't know. I would imagine that this is going to accommodate the longer bullets, just like this action. This has a little cutout there. I have had issues in a stock. I haven't had the issues in a chassis, but in a stock running the projectiles out at 2.95, I think is what the MDT without the binder plate can go to. It sometimes catches the you can kind of see where the right there, kind of where the magazine area is on the action. Over here, hopefully that's big enough. I would assume it is. We'll see. And that's going to do it for this video. Please like if you did, and leave a comment if there's something else you'd like to see on this. And hopefully this week I'll go out, and my plan is I'm going to take the same barrel, same scope, my Night Force over here, same chassis, and I'm going to shoot a couple 5-round groups and just see if this barrel shoots the same, how it feels shooting it, and kind of give you my thoughts on that. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching.